You're listening to the Millennial's Choice Show, Canada's most trusted podcast on all things real estate, finance, and entrepreneurship. Here's your host, Matthew Ablacan.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Millennial's Choice Show. I'm your host, Matthew. I'm here with my brother, Danny.
What's going on, guys?
And guys, we are going to try to answer the question of, do you need a buyer agent today? In today's market, in today's world, do you need a buyer agent? And the reason why we want to talk about this is there was a giant, enormous class action lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors that resulted in them being fined billions of dollars, and other larger companies were settling outside of court, hundreds of millions of dollars, lots of money exchanging hands because they were getting sued because the sellers argued that they fixed the commissions, and commissions are not fixed. There's nothing that says that we have to charge a certain amount. And so a lot of people may be listening to this and don't know that. And I know we're in Canada and this lawsuit happened in America, but typically when America sneezes, Canada catches a cold. So we want to, why are you laughing? You've never heard that saying before?
That was a good saying. No, I've never heard that before.
Carson, have you heard that? Yeah, Carson's heard that. Carson's heard that. When America sneezes, Canada catches a cold. So we want to get into, we don't care about the lawsuit, you guys. Like, it is what it is. If they were conspiring to fix commissions, that's a no, that's a bad thing to be doing. So we don't want to go down that rabbit hole. We don't care about that. Enough people have flooded the social media feeds, realtors acting like professionals in that space. We just want to answer the question, do you need a buyer's agent? Why or why not?
The answer is no. Podcast is done. I'm just kidding. You actually don't need a buyer agent. Does that mean you should have one? I think you should have one. And I want to talk about why people should have a buyer agent working for them, the benefits, the drawbacks or setbacks, which there are none. But I'd like to get into that because a lot of people now think, well, listen, I don't need a buyer agent. I'm just going to go directly to the seller and try to get a deal with them and their real estate agent. And maybe talk about the pros and cons of that too, right? Because let's be real, it's not a one size fits all. But let's operate from a proper framework. So just so we have guidance, you guys. So when we're talking about an agent, we're referring to the real estate salesperson or broker that you're working with. And specifically, I think this is important so that we could continue the conversation on the same page. That person is a full-time, experienced, solid negotiator, knows their business, knows their market, runs it like a business, and they are the buyer agent that we're referring to. We're not talking about part-timers. We're not talking about your cousin. We're not talking about people that just suck at the real estate business. We're talking about that person, the solid professional that you'd probably want to hire in any other field. That person. Do you need them as a buyer agent? Should you hire them as a buyer agent? Because the lawsuit has now resulted in a lot of people saying, I'm a seller. I don't want to pay the buyer's agent. I'm not the one hiring the buyer's agent. I'm hiring my agent to sell the property for me. So why should I pay them their commission? That's the case. Because right now, when you go to a listing, if you're looking for a property, we're representing you as a buyer. Maybe some of you listening, I've represented you as buyers before. You've never paid me. Someone else has paid me. So now, what if you had to pay me? Should you still hire me? Would you still hire me? Do you need me? That's what we're going to answer today. That's what we're going to try to answer today. So I just want to operate with that framework. Yeah, no, I like the clarity because a lot of people don't even know what a buyer's agent is. So explaining that to them first is huge, especially this is more for first-time home buyers that have never bought a property. They might be, reading what's going on and saying, well, how does this affect me? Why is this important? Why should I, look into this and whatnot? So for someone that hasn't bought real estate ever here, I'm talking again, Ontario. We're here in Ontario, Canada. For someone that hasn't bought real estate here, you can go and purchase a property without a real estate agent. You are able to do that. And all that simply means is you don't have someone representing your interests. when you go to a person selling their house and they have their own real estate agent, that real estate agent typically is working for their client, who is the seller in this case. And so you can go to that person and want to put an offer on that property, and that seller's real estate agent can do the paperwork for you pretty much. With that being said, do you think that when you're a buyer going to the seller and to the seller's agent to want to put an offer, do you think that seller's agent is going to have your best interest at hand? I don't think so. I think the seller's agent is responsible to getting their seller top dollar for their property and selling it as soon as possible. And they're not interested in giving a good deal to a buyer.
Yeah, and it's even more simply put, when I, as a seller, if I'm going to go to a seller's house on a listing appointment and I'm going to sign up their house for sale, the documents that we're signing state that I represent their interest. Plain and simple. Myself, Millennial's Choice, the brokerage, we're representing the seller's best interest. That's what we sign off on. Those are provincial documents. Those are standard documents. Those aren't our documents. And so if you're a buyer, you need to know that that's the environment you're entering into if you go direct without your own representation to another agent's property that they're selling. That's the environment you're going into, the seller and the listing agent. It's not because the listing agent is a bad guy or a bad woman. It's the seller and the listing agent are working together. They're in cahoots together. They're in bed together. They're however way you want to say it. That's what it is. That realtor owes what's called fiduciary duties, duty of care to their client, because that's their client. And so you as a buyer have to go into this scenario understanding that that's what's going to happen. If you tell the listing agent, this house is listed for $1 million. I'm only prepared to give them $950,000, but I want to start off with $850,000. Let's see if the seller goes for it or what the seller says or what the seller thinks. And if that listing agent looks at you and goes, $850,000, okay, I'll get back to you. And then that real estate agent goes to their seller and goes, look, they're offering $850. They're willing to go up to $950. Let's just counter it a little bit, play around with them, show them that we're willing to negotiate. There's nothing wrong with what that agent is doing, because if they're not representing you, if they're not getting into what's called multiple representation with you as the buyer and their seller who they're already engaged with, they're just doing their job. They're just representing their seller's best interest. So now you as a buyer have to be, in my opinion, when you don't need a real estate agent as a buyer, in my opinion, or a seller, is when you're so experienced in sales, specifically the real estate market, that you wouldn't need to hire someone. So let me give you an example. This wouldn't work per se, but it wouldn't really be realistic, but just as an example. If I'm selling my own property, I'll probably choose to represent myself and I'll list it through my company. But let's say I didn't want to do that, because there's a lot of real estate agents, they don't represent themselves. They actually hire a real estate agent to represent them for certain reasons. But let's just say I was going to do that. I don't need to hire myself. I don't need to hire another real estate agent. I'm experienced enough that I can just do the sale on my own, specifically, not even listed on the MLS, not even go through a brokerage. I could just find my own ways to sell the property because I'm learned in that field. That's an extreme, but that's an example of when you would not need a real estate agent. Or as a buyer, if you're so experienced, you're so knowledgeable, you've done this for so long, you've purchased 100 properties before, you know how to negotiate deals, and you were only using a real estate agent in the past because you wanted to help them out and they never did anything for you. They brought you zero value, and you became so experienced throughout your course of time negotiating contracts, looking at properties, doing deals, that you truly don't need a real estate agent. Then there could be those scenarios where you don't. Definitely those scenarios exist. Or like a real estate lawyer, maybe a good real estate lawyer, they could do the transaction themselves and they're familiar with conditions and how offers work and maybe how to negotiate. If they're a good real estate lawyer, they may not need to hire a real estate agent. But if those things don't exist and you're an everyday person, I guarantee you, this is a guarantee, operating with that framework of who the realtor is that you'd hire, I guarantee you, if you're just an everyday person, you're a doctor, this isn't something you do, you're buying your first home, I guarantee you that you will be better off having an experienced, prudent real estate agent in your corner. Now, the question becomes, how much do you pay them? Can you afford to pay them? Those questions now come up because that's the result of this lawsuit. Sellers are now saying, I shouldn't have to pay and I don't want to pay a buyer's agent because that's not who I'm hiring. I'm hiring the seller agent. If there's a buyer out there that wants to bring in their own real estate agent and make an offer, they should pay their realtor. I agree with them.
Which makes sense.
I agree with them. I've always agreed with them. Why should the seller pay? Why should the seller pay me? Because I'm selling their house. I'm not working for them. I'm working for you as a buyer. And if you want to retain me, like, you're a buyer. This is the scenario everybody cries about. But I'm a first-time home buyer. I could barely rub two nickels together. So why should I pay a real estate agent? I could barely afford this house. Well, does the seller pay for your lawyer that you're going to have in that transaction? Does the seller pay for your appraisal that you need to conduct in that transaction? Does the seller pay for anything else relating to that transaction that you as a buyer have to pay for? No. Why should they pay for your real estate agent? That's the only argument that I want to make against first-time home buyers.
I agree. I honestly think that it shouldn't be the responsibility of the seller, like you said. The seller has their own agent. As a buyer, like Matthew said, there are a lot of examples, though they might be outliers, where someone is so experienced, like if it's like let's say real estate lawyer and they could do their own deals, that's great. They might not need an agent or have, want to work with an agent, a buyer agent, it's fine. But for your typical person, they have to, if they see the value in it, right, where it comes to negotiating, not only negotiating, but finding the properties, knowing how to, what to expect in terms of the price that they're looking for and show them the right places, booking showings, those kinds of things, those are all great. But if a buyer knows the value but wants to hire an agent, what's going to determine the price? That's going to be interesting, because what if agents band together and say, the standard of working with a buyer, we should keep it at 2.5% commission, because that's what we've been getting this whole time when a seller's been paying it.
They can't do that, though.
I feel like that'll be interesting.
They can't do that.
They can't legally do it, but many buyers might say, you know what, let's just stick to our guns, or buyer agents might say, let's stick to our guns, and this is how much we're going to charge.
No,
in a certain area.
I don't think
that's possible.
Not that it's not possible. There might be a group of people that try to do that, attempt to do that. I just think that's the wrong approach. I think it comes down to your value. And again, consumers, you guys are listening to this. Why are these guys talking about real estate agents? Because you're probably thinking of buying something or investing in something. You have to have the right person on your file, whether you're working directly with that realtor to buy a pre-construction property or a resale property, whatever type of property it is. You got to be able to now, discern why you'd hire that person over the other person. You have to have the right person for the job. And that comes from value. That's not based on anything else. It's based on economic value. How much has that person networked? How much has that person worked on their skills and improved their skills day in and day out? Are they full-time? Are they, again, the things we talked about early on in this episode, are they full-time? Are they committed? Have they bought a property before? I take a lot of crap from realtors. I don't know why. I'm a big advocate for realtors and for the industry, but don't tell me that a realtor that hasn't bought a property before, if all things remain equal, is going to be better than a realtor that has bought a property. If they're full-time, they're networking, they're doing all that, everything is the same. And then the one realtor has bought a property and gone through that process, and one hasn't, but everything else is the same. The guy or girl that's gone through the home buying process is going to be better than you. It's going to be better than the other person.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
What I want to ask you is, do you think that buyers would prefer, and for any buyers listening to this, please let us know what you think. I'm curious. For buyers, let's say, that find the value in a buyer's agent, do you think they'd prefer a flat fee, or do you think they would maybe goes towards an hourly rate? Like if you're hiring a lawyer, they bill you hourly, right? Like per minute, maybe some lawyers. Or do you think people prefer to pay a commission of like, let's say a percentage of the purchase price? I think if that happens, a lot of buyers personally are going to lean away from the percentage of the purchase price and maybe lean towards something like a flat fee for their services or an hourly kind of rate. What do you think?
It's not that interesting of a question. I'm not going to lie. Sorry. But it's like at the end of the day, the buyers are going to care about paying the least amount as possible. And I never liked percentages because a percentage doesn't actually tell you what your revenue stream is. Like, what are you actually earning as a realtor? So there's two hats to this. What does a consumer prefer? They're going to prefer the cheapest possible. And that's the consumers. Why would you want to pay more? Plain and simple, right? Why would you want to pay more in anything? You want as cheap as possible.
The problem is you don't know what's cheaper though, because when you're looking for houses, you know this, it could take maybe 30 showings.
No. What I mean is, yeah, I'm going to get to that. From a consumer perspective, you want to pay the least amount as possible and get the best as possible, the best service as possible.
For sure.
That is like universal, right? But from a realtor standpoint, like you're asking me, what do I think is better for the consumer? For the consumer, most affordable and the best.
No, I mean, like, what do you think is going to happen?
But for me, I'll answer that. But for me, what I will do in my business is that if you're a buyer and you want to work with me going forward and the seller is not paying me, okay, what is it that you're looking? It's going to be a case by case basis. What is it that you're looking for? Are you looking for a $500,000 condo? Then maybe a percentage might make more sense. If you're looking for a $2 million house, maybe a flat fee would make a little bit more sense. And ultimately, it's going to come down to what's my time worth? And if you don't want to pay that, then you don't have to. And we don't have to do the transaction. Because as a seller agent, if I get that contract, then like a magnet, people are coming to me. I have the property. And what do I think is going to happen? In an environment where supply is so low, regardless of what's happening with interest rates, supply is so low that there's a need for housing across the globe, across the nation. The person with the listing is going to be gold. And the buyer agent with the most connections, the most network, with the best skills, I think they're going to make more money than they've ever made. I think they're going to make more money than they've ever made because people listening to this, people looking at what's going on, especially when we're seeing bidding wars come back and rates are at 6-7%, especially when there's a scenario where there's a bidding war, why the heck would a seller agent care to work with you? Why would they care to work with you if they're getting paid the same? There's 40 offers on the table. What does it matter to them what offer gets accepted? If the offer is solid and it works for their client's best interest, why would they care to work for you for free? It doesn't make sense. So you're going to always need a solid buyer agent and you're always going to have a need for a solid seller agent. Let's just jump in real quick. ChatGPT, for example. Of course, when it gets developed and now you're seeing it in robots and they're doing basic functionality and stuff, but of course, when it gets developed, there's going to be a huge need for it and it's going to displace a lot of people. But you know what it can't displace? It can't displace what happens, what should you do in this scenario if, for example, right now there's 40 offers on this property. How would you approach this particular multiple offer scenario? I don't know what ChatGPT is going to tell you. What's it going to tell you? Put your best foot forward, put your highest price.
Well, maybe not ChatGPT, but maybe there's going to be algorithms that are made where they can analyze all of the offers and advise the seller and say, based off of our scanning of all the offers, this is the offer that specifically meets what you're looking for.
What I'm saying is that, will it make your job easier in many situations? Yes, it'll make it more efficient. It could scan 40 offers within 5 minutes versus the olden days that somebody reminded me of yesterday, where you'd go to the person's office, wait outside with 39 other agents. It's all awkward. Hey, how are you? Yeah, good to see you. Yeah. Meanwhile, you're like, I wonder what their offer is. It simplifies all that, right? Like we can maybe scan 40 offers in 5 minutes. But what it can't tell you is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm representing this buyer. I've got our own mortgage division. They're already qualified. Here's proof of that. Also to the seller agent, hey, Dave, I've seen you for the last 12 years. I'm solid. My clients are solid. I wouldn't be working with these people if they weren't solid. I've worked with them in the past, et cetera, et cetera. The human element of it, it'll never replace, because robots ain't going to a networking event, meeting people and talking to people or talking to other robots. It ain't going to work that way. If we let it get to that point, then all the good stuff I'm talking about goes out the window. But at the same time, that means that the technology you're using to make your life easier actually makes it more difficult, or maybe not difficult, but actually makes it less lucrative, because as a seller, you won't get more money. As a buyer, you won't be able to save more money or maybe get your deal accepted. There's always going to be a need for the solid, in my opinion, agents, but not just agents, the solid people in every profession. You know what I mean? Those solid people in every profession are going to always be needed, in my opinion, because they're the ones that are bringing the most value. They're the ones that are bringing the most skill, the most competence to the table. So I think that what's going to happen in the future, you're going to see maybe less buyer agents. You're going to see better buyer agents, and you're going to see a higher need for more skilled buyer agent. That's what I think. And in the scenario where there's bidding wars, how could you? Okay, let's go further in that scenario. 40 offers, 10 of them don't have buyer agents. Why would the listing agent work with you over the other 9 buyers that don't have a buyer agent? What if 10 of them don't have a buyer agent? Who are they going to work with? Typically the person with the best offer, but at the same time, they're not going to guide you properly. They're not going to guide you with what's the best offer. Why? Because we said it already. They owe fiduciary duties to their seller. Unless they engaged in multiple representation between you and the seller, which is phasing out. And in certain provinces, it's not even allowed anymore. So it's phasing itself out. Why would they work with you over the other 9? You're not going to engage in multiple representation with everyone. You can't. So it's a slippery slope. And I think you're going to always need a buyer agent and a listing agent.
I agree. And I really do think that this would be good for a lot of people, and more specifically good for our industry. And what I mean by that is for all the part-time agents that, do it for their family and friends, and they're not really the top professionals. They're not in it 100%. Those people, I feel like, are not going to be able to go and do things for free like how they're doing it now, or do it at, 0.25% or whatever, whenever they're trying to take a listing on that's for a close family friend. They're just not going to be able to do something like that anymore, because a lot of the buyers, like you just said, are going to be gravitating towards the really good buyer agents that, offer that value, like you're saying, that professionalism that's going to help them get their deal accepted. And if the buyer's agent, why I'm to bring it back and connect it, if the buyer's agent is not getting a commission from the seller and they have to charge their own, well, I think those people now, the same family and friends, are going to say to them, well, you're going to do it for free. Obviously, you're not going to charge me anything because we know the seller's not paying for you. And guess what those agents are going to say? Well, I obviously can't do it for free. So, I have to charge you this much. And guess what? Then I think that's when those family members will say, well, you're part-time. You're not that experienced. I was just hoping
I've never paid you before.
Yeah, I've never paid you before. I was just hoping for you to do me a solid because I know the seller was going to pay you. Well, now the seller's not paying. Now you got to pony up. If you're going to pony up, you're going to pay a professional to do the job. And as a result, all those, 90% of agents that only do one or less transaction a year are not going to find it as lucrative or incentivized to be in the industry and have the license and pay the fees and go deal with all the stress and headaches of a transactional business, right? And volume-based business. I think those people are just going to be like, it's not worth it anymore, because we can't charge people, $10,000 or whatever it is, a commission of 2.5, because, no one's going to pay us because they don't believe in themselves and being able to provide that value like you were talking about before. I think it's going to be great.
And in this market, In this market, we're getting paid higher, by the way. Right now, we're getting paid higher commissions because there's a need for guys like us.
Yeah.
I'm getting paid higher commissions on my deals in this market. So I could only imagine in a market where it's less saturated, you rise to the top, you've been at it for 15 years, doing it well, your own brand, you're the guy. They want you. Why would you want somebody else? It doesn't make sense. Why would you want someone else?
Yeah.
Right?
Don't you want the best?
You want the best for the job. Now, if you're going to go pay the person 10 grand for something you could have done, of course it doesn't make sense. But you need to understand what it is that you could do and what it is they could do and know those differences. It's not just as easy as putting a for sale sign on your property if you're a selling agent. And it's not as easy as just doing paperwork. You know, you go by yourself into a transaction. You don't realize that the listing agent, you go direct. You don't realize that they put the hot water tank is a rental, but you have to assume it. And you were under the impression that the seller was going to pay it off on closing, so you could have a hot water tank that is paid for. Well, now you're stuck with a rental for the rest of its life, the hot water tank's life. Whereas on the flip side of that, you have a hot water tank that's a rental, and you hire a selling agent, a listing agent, and they don't put on the paperwork that it's a rental that the buyer has to now take over as a rental. Guess what's going to happen on final closing? Your lawyer's going to say, hey, it's not in the agreement. You got to pay $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, whatever it is to pay for the hot water tank, buy it out and then give it to the buyer. You can't take it. It's included. You have to buy it out for the buyer. In both scenarios, you need to have the right professional representing you. You might think you're saving some money, but all of a sudden that little tiny mistake, that's one example. Tiny mistake just costed you thousands of dollars. The commissions that you were going to save. As a buyer, what does that work out to be if you're paying $60 a month, $70 a month for a hot water tank rental, and that's $900 a year? Over 10 years is $9,000. But what if with a buyer agent who can negotiate for you that gets paid on closing, and now the seller pays for that from the monies that you're paying for the house, and all of a sudden now you don't have that payment over 10 years, you just saved $9 grand. That even if you paid that buyer agent $7 grand, you made money. So it's a numbers thing. You have to understand the value that you're getting in exchange for what you're paying.
But that's the problem. I feel like people don't see that unless they go through it. Like I've had clients in the past where, they've, happily worked with me, right, on the buying side, right? And again, they're not paying commission. The seller's going to pay the commission. And for example, these guys trust me, right? Good friends trust me. And I'm trying to get them the best deal, save them a lot of money, and get the house for them because they like the house. Their budget, let's say, for example, is $800,000, right? I know I can get the house for them for $750,000, possibly even less, but they're willing to spend $800,000. Now, because I have the relationship, I have the experience, they've trusted me, and I love what I do, and I'm really good at what I do. I'm not just going to go to the other agent on the other side and say, here's our offer, $800,000, it's our best, take it and go. And you never know, those guys might be like, oh, wow, that was so easy. We got $800,000. That's what we wanted. Instead, I've actually been in situations where my clients were willing to pay $100,000 more. And I was able to get it for $100,000 less, roughly.
What's that worth?
What's that worth, guys? Like, you just saved them like $80,000.
To me, that's worth $90,000.
That's what it's worth. But a lot of people don't realize that.
If you sent them a bill for 90 grand, they should not complain because they were willing to spend 100. Now they're only spending 90. They saved 10. Exactly. Obviously, you don't send them the bill because right now we're still getting compensated by the seller. But in that scenario, you save them 100 grand. If you said, hey, you got to pay me 95 instead of 100, they'd say, deal. I save 5 grand. It's 5 grand is 5 grand. Imagine you got paid, your commission was 95,000. It would be worth it for them. But because you're able to save them, because the way you charge is different, it's worth it to work with you. It was very much worth it to work with you.
Exactly. And that's where a lot of people don't understand because they think, well, every realtor is the same. And I give the analogy of if a realtor was going to give you a kickback of all of his commission, let's say it's a family friend, they're giving you all the kickback. Do you really think that real estate agent is going to be willing to go and negotiate like that on multiple different properties, spending hours, hundreds of hours helping you find a place when they're getting paid $0, okay? They're going to keep doing that. Or do you think if they know what your top dollar is, do you think they're going to go and just try to get the deal at your top dollar? Because they'll say, well, that's what you were happy with. Let's just get you the deal. And that way they get you the house. You pay top dollar, your max. But at the same time, they're kind of done working with you and showing you places and spending countless hours with you. I personally think, especially for those agents that are charging a huge discount or giving a huge cash back, that's of course what they're going to do. They're not going to spend countless more hours trying to negotiate or trying to show you many more places to try to get you a good deal. They're just not. It doesn't make sense for them to do that. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. When I hear it all the time, people say, well, what's the difference between, any realtor? Every realtor that has a license can do the same thing.
Go interview them and find out what the difference is.
It's not the same, though. It's the same thing with like a lawyer or anybody else or a contractor. Like it's a red flag, guys.
Let me give you different examples. Like if your airline pilot said, hey guys, I drive Uber 5 days a week and I fly twice a week. And, I'm part-time, but like I'm getting the hang of it. Don't worry. It's not that bumpy. It's a smooth ride, smooth flight. You'd obviously be like, I want to get another flight with another pilot. If your doctor had to perform open heart surgery on you and they were just coming off a shift somewhere else,
working at Walmart or something,
whatever they're working at, and they said to you, don't sweat it. I've done this like 2 times before because I'm part-time. And, don't sweat it. Yeah, I mean, if we go based on the book, you should be fine. Like, at the end of the day, you'd be like, yeah, I want someone else to operate on me. If you were convicted of a heinous crime, is that the word?
Heinous
crime. If you were convicted of, a serious criminal offense, somebody breaks into your house, you go, pop, 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 you shoot them, and all of a sudden, you're the one getting arrested, right? Don't you want to hire the best criminal defense lawyer you can because you acted in self-defense? Don't you want the best criminal lawyer to defend you and get you out of that situation? Or do you want to hire a part-timer? Do you want to hire someone that just graduated? Let's be honest, even if they're full-time. It's not about just part-time, full-time. It's about skills, experience, knowledge, know-how, right? You wouldn't want to fly with a pilot like that. You wouldn't want to get open heart surgery by a doctor who's like that. And you wouldn't want to be defended by a criminal lawyer who's in that position. In all 3 of those scenarios, you expect and you would hire the best. In all 3 of those scenarios. Why is it any different with your financial situation and you buying your home that you're going to live in, that your family's going to... Why would you not hire the best?
Especially when it comes to your biggest investment, financial investment, or one of the biggest financial investments, the place you're living.
And just the cherry on top, if you guys are investors, why wouldn't you hire the best? If you're an investor, you want to get the best realtor, getting you the best deals, negotiating the best deals, getting access to the best deals. I'm doing a deal with somebody right now with another realtor. He's got access to all kinds of property like land and plazas and things like that. I did a deal where this guy was like, I need you to back out of this deal, he said to me. He's like, just back out of it. There's another party involved. He's like, just back out of it. It's for your own good, he said. And I know this guy. I've dealt with him a few times. So I'm like, I have an idea why he's saying it, but that's not good enough for me. I got to do the deal. So I got the deal. I went forward with it and I won. I got the deal. Now the deal's not going to work out because the reason why I thought he said that is true. And so now you got to back out of the deal because the property's no good. But you know what he said to me? He goes, hey, I've got another one that's 3 times that. It's a land deal. 3 times the size of that. 5 minutes away. There's no funny business there. Maybe you want to go look at that. Now I know this guy. He has to tell me, back out of it because he knew, but he can't reveal it because why? He's representing the seller. But because we know each other, he kind of gave me a little hint at it, right? I still went forward, learned, and it didn't cost me anything. So now we're going to move forward on another deal. Why do I say that? My connections with this guy has now opened up a new door of opportunity that wasn't there before. Simply because over the last 3 years, I've been building my relationship with him.
That's invaluable.
Well, what's the value if that other deal goes through on a land deal and maybe the developer that I'm representing can build 1,500 units there? 1,500 units. What's the value for them? That's probably a $500 million project, right? Why? Because I put myself out there, you're trying, you're winning deals, you're negotiating, you're meeting with people, you're spending a lot of time that's actually not resulting in income right away, but you're building, you're expanding, you're getting better, more valuable. Of course you'd want to hire me. You want access to land deals, you want access to plazas. You're not just going to go to your cousin that just got his license or her license. You're going to go with the best. So that's my argument for this. You got to hire the best, and the best is not part-time. And unfortunately, the best is also not new. Before I get my head bit off, well, how does the new agent ever get a chance? You align yourself with the right group, the right team of people that are experienced, that where you're trying to aspire to, they've already reached and are gaining momentum and reaching new heights, and you build and you don't come off arrogant like most of them are, that I know I could do this and blah, blah, blah. And you don't do that. So you have to hire the best. There's going to be a need for it.
Hire the best and know what it is, you want out of it, right? A lot of people, they just don't know, and they don't want to go and educate themselves and learn why it's good and beneficial. And as a result, they won't find the need. So you need to know why you should work with someone or you shouldn't. Exactly. Right? Know the reasons of what you're doing, why you're doing it. Plain and simple. So for anybody listening to this, if you want to share your thoughts, make sure to reach out to us. I'm on Instagram at Danny Ablacan. Matthew's on Instagram at Matthew Ablacan. So make sure to DM us what your thoughts are. And did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think this was a great episode.
Yeah.
Just like anything in your life, any partnership in your life, you got to nurture it. You got to make it grow. You got to water it. And so why not have a relationship with a real estate agent or broker, with Danny, with myself? We have access to deals. We can help you make money. We can help you invest, earn financial freedom. Why not? But you gotta build that. It takes time. It takes time. So thanks for listening, you guys. I have nothing more to add. And until next time,
we're out.
We're out, guys.